I'm Eddie Muller. Welcome to Noir Alley. Pull up a seat here at Bar 355 in Oakland, California, and settle in for this week's movie, The Big Combo, released in 1955 by Allied Artists. It's generally considered to be director Joseph H. Lewis's second-best film, after the 1950 classic Gun Crazy. Well, one thing that's for sure, The Big Combo is a high-concept, low-budget distillation of many of the tropes and iconography from the 10 years of Hollywood noir that preceded it. The auteur theory would have you believe that this is a Joseph H. Lewis film, but it's producer and scriptwriter Philip Yordan who gets the official authorship credit, with a title card usually reserved for the likes of Hemingway, Faulkner, or Fitzgerald, which is amusing because it's entirely possible Phil Yordan didn't write this script. In the 1950s, his modus operandi was to sign deals for screenwriting jobs and then use a stable of blacklisted writers to do the actual work. Yordan certainly could write, but by this time he was primarily an operator, a guy who favored making deals over sitting down at a typewriter and putting in the work. The script is more likely the work of blacklisted Ben Maddow. He'd secretly written Man Crazy, the picture Yordan made before this, as well as Men at War, which they'd make next. The Big Combo is a co-production of Security Pictures and Theodora Productions. Security was a partnership between Yordan and Sidney Harmon, a Broadway producer and writer. Theodora was a new outfit created by actor Cornell Wilde, just getting his feet wet as a producer. They intended for the film to be in widescreen Technicolor, with red-hot Jack Palance starring opposite Wilde. Their distribution deal was with Allied Artists, which was angling for the big time, funding pictures by John Huston, William Wyler, and Billy Wilder. So you can imagine where that left newcomers like Security Pictures and Theodora Productions. So much time and effort went into landing Palance for the lead that a month before the start of production, they still hadn't hired a director. And when Allied Artists didn't come through with the money they'd hoped for, the producers' large and colorful ambitions took a hit. They made a distress call to cinematographer John Alton, an artist who knew everything about doing more with less. He is the true star of this show, and if The Big Combo isn't Alton at his best, his work is still relentlessly resourceful, creating images that'll remind you of Edward Hopper's paintings or the photos of Arthur Weegee Fellig. Joseph Lewis signed on only 48 hours before the start of production, and they'd already been shooting for 4 days when Jack Palance abruptly walked off the picture, furious that the producers refused to cast his wife, Virginia Baker, in a pivotal role. Fortunately, Joe Louis and Richard Conte belonged to the same tennis club, and before Palance was done throwing his tantrum, Louis had convinced Conte to bail out the project. It's a character Conte had played many times before, so he needed zero prep. The cruel energy he exudes gives The Big Combo its snap, crackle, and pop. It's easy to see why 17 years later he was the leading candidate to play Vito Corleone in The Godfather, until they made Marlon Brando an offer he couldn't refuse. Conte ended up playing Don Corleone's rival, Barzini, an older version of Mr. Brown, the gangster he plays here. Years earlier, Brian Donlevy might have been cast as Mr. Brown, the type of swaggering kingpin he'd played in pictures like 1942's The Glass Key. But by 1955, Donlevy had slipped to second-tier status. And here, in a cruel but effective bit of casting, he's relegated to being Conte's punching bag, his worn-out right-hand man. At the time of its release, many critics panned The Big Combo as gruesome, repulsive, and sadistic, citing in particular a prolonged torture scene that Lewis milked for all it was worth. This was strong stuff, ahead of its time in terms of casual violence. Without much modification, that scene could fit right into later films like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. I suspect QT gleaned a few things from this movie. Now, one critic, more sympathetic toward hard-boiled crime dramas, called this red meat for the action crowd. Well, I hope you carnivores are hungry. Featuring a vivid cast including Gene Wallace, Lee Van Cleef, Earl Holliman, Ted DeCorsia, John Hoyt, and Helen Walker. Here is The Big Combo.